schedule.
And we're live. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Spirited Live. My name is Sam Nash Green. I am your scribe of spirits. My Uber driver once called me Dr. Whiskey, so that's a thing. Today I am joined by a friend, Mr. Mitch McDonald, the West Coast sales manager for Blue Ridge Spirits, and we're going to be talking about Joseph Magnus and Vigilant Gin. I actually had to look that up because I didn't actually know the name of the gin. Welcome to Juxtaposing Joseph Magnus. Hopefully I didn't make an offensive name this week. I almost did last week. Oh, Mitch, I almost did something really stupid last week.
Oh, that's never good.
Like, I didn't realize it until someone pointed out the alliteration of the letters I was using probably wasn't the wisest.
Fair enough. Honest mistake.
Our friend Mark from Korea says hello.
Hey,
Mark Patton, also a whiskey sommelier and a bourbon steward. He's an executive bourbon steward, actually. Well, I'm a certified bourbon steward. I haven't gone to Kentucky to take my course yet, although I wanted to last year in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get started drinking some gin. So we actually have 3 SKUs of Joseph Magnus today, you guys, and then 1 SKU of Vigilant Gin. And when Mitch dropped this off, he's like, "Hey, you want to do some gin?" I'm like, "I love gin, and I love a Navy strength gin." He's like, "Well, why don't we start with that?" I'm like, "Yes, please. Let's kick it off into high gear."
Might as well.
He says, "Go east, young man." Mark, you're what, twice my age, roughly? Anyway, so let's start off with some nice Navy strength gin. But before we do, actually, I'm going to pour a little bit of this just to, kind of wake up my palate. But before we do, Mitch, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm based in Southern California, work for Blue Ridge Spirits and Wine Marketing. We are a sales and marketing firm that's our corporate office is in Atlanta, Georgia, but we've got people, spread across the United States. We've got a pretty small portfolio of both wine and spirits, but we've got a really good mix of things, though. So this is our go-to bourbon of choice in our portfolio, and we feel very honored to be able to represent such a great brand. But before I get too deep into that, that's a bit about myself. I've been in the industry for about 5 years now. And been selling gin almost the entire time, so I always try and sneak a little gin in there. Yeah.
Fuck.
Vigilant gin's a fun one. I mean, like any craft distillery, it takes a while to get the bourbon right where they want it. So Joseph Magnus kind of followed the same suit, and they said, well, if we're going to be making bourbon, we may as well have some gin. And so that's kind of their first spirit that they came out with. But Vigilant is a Navy strength, so 114 proof. For those of you who don't know, it's it's got enough proof to ignite gunpowder, as the old British soldiers could vouch for. Yeah, when you have a chance to try this, it's a very unique, interesting gin. We've got lemon, figs, mint, hibiscus. But one of the botanicals that really stands out is the harissa. So you've got this really smoky, savory kind of flavor to it. And then, of course, you've got that Italian juniper backbone. So it definitely still definitely a gin, but it's very unique.
I want to backtrack a little bit. Before we get too deep into the gin, I know I got really excited there for a second because it's such a bizarre gin.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Ridge, actually, guys, just brought in and started working with Loch Lomond Group. So that is Loch Lomond of Nova Scotia. So we have Mitch to thank in a huge part for helping us bring Loch Lomond, England, Scotia onto the show last month. And that was a lot of fun.
Well, happy I could help. There's some great scotches. So the more people who learn about those and have the opportunity to try them, the better. So.
I mean, yes, but also, like, I don't want to happen where it's like now everyone knows about it and I can't get it. So it's a double-edged sword where it's like you want a brand to succeed, but also like you don't want it to be like too well known because you want to be able to keep some of it like secret for yourself.
Fair
That's what
enough.
happened with Henry McKenna. Is like it won an award and now it costs like $60 when it used to be $35, like at most 40.
Yeah. You can find it for a lot higher than that too. Sometimes some of these stores get a little carried away.
I was in a Pavilions a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to the liquor manager, and he said, well, what's your unicorn bottle? And I said, I don't really have a unicorn, but I guess if I had to pick one, it would be a McKenna at a fair price. And I specified fair price because I am not about to go pay $60-$70 for a bottle of 10-year-old hunter proof bourbon that used to cost me $20 to $30.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to the back, he grabs the bottle, and it rings up at $69.99. And I'm like, dude, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation. Appreciate you getting me this bottle. I know it's your last one. I can't take it. I can't pay that price. He was shocked. It was kind of like I'm sorry, what? kind of look where it's like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry, but it's good. It's just, it's not $70 good.
Yeah.
Like, no offense, bro, but like, just not that good. So jumping back into the gin, this is also distilled at Joseph Magnus Distillery.
So yeah, I mean, we'll get into the bourbons here in a minute, but pretty much everything on the bourbon side, they're actually sourcing from MGP. So the gin is really the only thing that they're distilling at the distillery currently.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to say, how does a 3-year-old distillery have aged product already?
Right. So this is made at the distillery, 100% corn distillate. Like I said, with that harissa in there, it's got a very unique flavor with the savoriness and the spiciness. But then you get that sweet lemon, mint, fig kind of coming through. But it is definitely a fun cocktail gin. You can really play around with it, make some unique drinks. We started making Bloody Marys with it, or red snappers, I guess it would be with the gin, and it works really well. But yeah, it's a fun one to have.
Great in a bee's knees.
Yeah, I've been down that road a couple of times. It works well. But yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting twist on a lot of classic cocktails because it just is bringing out so much unique flavor.
I'm looking at the legs on this thing. It's got, it's quite viscous. And, you would expect that it's such a high proof of Navy strength. What is the exact proof on this bad boy? It's clocking in at 57%, so that's 114 proof. I didn't have to do the math. It was actually on the bottle. I tried to do the math, and the bottle beat me to it.
But that being said, I don't think it tastes like 114 proof. I mean, I don't know when the last.
No, it does not. It doesn't drink that hot. What I think I'm getting that heat is from the harissa.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what is harissa? I've never heard of it before. I don't know it.
Oh, it's an Indian spice. Typically more associated in culinary. For Middle Eastern and Indian type cuisine.
Gotcha. I'm getting a lot of pepper on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Freshly cracked red pepper. I do get some of that spice like you were talking about. And like I was talking about a little bit too as well from that harissa.
Mm-hmm.
Gin fascinates me because, I mean, if you think about it, gin is just flavored vodka.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's, that comment has upset a few people a couple of times.
I mean,
where, I'm just calling gin flavored vodka.
As long as there's juniper berries in there, I think you're good to go.
Yes. As long as there are juniper berries, yeah, but you're basically what they're doing is they're distilling vodka. They're basically distilling to MGS and then redistilling through a botanical basket, usually. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of different ways to go about to make it. I mean, you don't have to have the botanical basket. I mean, it can be botanicals could be steeped overnight, or for as long as they want. Just depending upon the product that they're making. But yeah, it's not nearly as many rules and regulations in the gin category as there is in several other spirit categories. That's for sure.
Gotcha. So, where did the name Vigilant come from? Obviously, there's got to be some kind of reasoning behind it instead of, Joseph Magnus Gin.
Yeah, I mean the story in which I was told was that they didn't have a name for it and they couldn't figure out how to get their recipe right down, to exactly where they wanted it, and it just came up in conversation at the distillery. If we just stay vigilant with it, it'll come out. It'll come out eventually. And someone in the room was like, it just resonated with the master distiller, and they said, yeah, that could be a good name for it. So that's kind of fell into the naming of it.
Juniper, harissa, lemon, mint, fig, hops, orris root, hibiscus. Vigilant Navy Strength Gin is an exquisitely powerful spirit with notes of fresh juniper, lemon, hops, and hibiscus. I mean, what interests me the most here is the hops, because I'm sure there are many other gin brands doing it, but none that, quite come out and say, hey, we're done with hops. And, what I would like to see actually is an IPA gin. That would be interesting, using hops that you usually use in IPAs to make IPA beer to make a gin. I think that could be really interesting and really fun is, an IPA beer.
Would be cool.
So talking about this established in 1892 and then reestablished in 2015. That's the Joseph A. Magnus Company.
Yeah, so I was actually going to say, unless you had more questions on the gin, I was just going to kind of give you like a little bit of background history on Joseph Magnus as a brand.
Please do. Yeah, I'm going to keep sipping on this gin a little bit, but please, go ahead and talk about Joseph Magnus as a brand.
Yeah, for sure. So back in 2007, a gentleman was going through some old family memorabilia in his parents' attic, and he came across a 122-year-old bottle of bourbon that was very meticulously packed away. Had no idea what it was, why it was there, what it was about, but it had the family name on it. It also had the family crest on the bottle. So he took it back to some other family members and said, hey, what is this? Found it in mom and dad's attic, what have you. And come to find out, his great-great-grandfather was a bourbon distiller, and his distillery was closed because of prohibition and never reopened. So he became kind of consumed with the story behind it and just did as much research as he could and was constantly trying to learn more, find out more. Eventually got some other friends who were interested in the story. And in 2015, they were able to pull some money together and relaunch the brand. So on every bottle of anything made by Joseph Magnus, you're going to have that established 1892, reestablished 2015. So kind of a neat little reference to the story there. And then they also have the raised family crest on the back of all their bottles.
Yeah, I was looking at that and feeling it. It's a lion and arrows.
Yeah. So yeah.
Now, cool, just a quick heraldry nerd thing. The family crest, if you get really technical and at least follow English heraldry rules, it's passed down from male heir to male heir. So technically speaking, I mean, American heraldry is much more complicated, but unless it was just a complete lineage of male heirs, technically speaking, the chain was broken and this might not actually be the family crest anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really pedantic to point that out, but just an interesting little tidbit on heraldry rules is that it goes passed down from male heir to male heir, the rights to bear arms or bear this particular arms, and usually it's not the same. Each heir kind of tweaks it a little bit.
Interesting. Right on.
Before I got really into spirits, I was really into heraldry.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
You can see my heraldry, my coat of arms is on my polo, actually. Again, going off of the American factor, I don't have a legal right to bear arms, but because I'm American, I can just do whatever I want in terms of heraldry.
Fair enough.
Sounds like Americans, right?
Yep, sounds about right. Sounds about right.
The more I sip on this gin, the more and more I appreciate it and like it. It actually really gets warmer, and it's really quite full-bodied.
Yeah. Well, the thing I always tell everyone is that it is just so unique. It's just a really fun one to have on the bar to play around with if you're into making cocktails at home or coming up with little creations. Um, it's it's uh, it's a fun one for sure.
How's this work in a martini?
I mean, you have to really enjoy that harissa to have it just as a straight alone martini. I like to have some modifiers in it personally. I did a Vesper recently with the St. George chili vodka, and
Sure.
then the harissa, the gin on the Vigilant, and then kind of threw in some I don't know, it was like a peach bitters or something completely, just really trying to mix it up, and that turned out quite nice. So yeah, I mean,
So we actually have a question in the comments from Mark. Now that we're going to move on to the bourbon, I've been holding this question for a minute. He said, is he correct in his understanding that Magnus has moved the distillery to Petoskey?
so they are now set up in Holland, Michigan. Previously, they were in Washington, D.C., and originally, like pre-prohibition, they were in Cincinnati. So originally, when they launched the brand in 2015, all in DC, I think that combination of just the space of the facility. I know they also had some shipping, logistical type challenges, and then there's also some pretty high taxes operating right out of DC. So they knew they were going to move. They didn't know which direction they were going to go, but tying back into the story, I guess the Magnus family had vacation to Lake Michigan on a pretty regular basis through generations up until today. So they thought it just made sense. So they're now in Holland, Michigan. And that's a pretty recent move. I mean, that's happened this year. They've been working through the logistics of relocating their facility, and it's been fun. I think they're all excited now that the growing pains are pretty much they worked out the kinks, and now they're in full operation now again.
And that leads me to my next question. You said this is the whiskey's coming from MGP right now, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So then that wouldn't lead to an issue of, yeast and, environmental differences, environmental factors mucking about with the flavor, obviously,
No,
because it is coming from MGP.
but these as we get into the bourbons, you're going to learn here shortly that they do. Magnus is really known for their cask finishing, and the finishing of these whiskeys is going to be taking place in Michigan now versus Washington D.C. And I don't think that that'll have much of an effect, but hey, it'll be interesting to see.
Mark, are you moving back to America? He said his new U.S. home is based in Detroit. And currently he lives in Seoul, Korea.
Well, then, I mean, coming from Detroit, that shouldn't be too bad of a journey to head over to Holland, Michigan. It's right on the lake. Should be a really nice trip. Check out some.
Mitch. Oh my God!
This gin
I'm
putting you to
sorry,
sleep?
y'all.
Come on, Sam.
I took a nap before our show. Somehow, so I still am on a bartender schedule despite a year outside of work. So my father called me this morning and said, "Hey, I got my second job," but it rang through and woke me up at like 9:30 in the morning.
Mm.
Ow. Note to self: don't do that again. So that mucked my sleep schedule a little bit, and it fucked me up. But anyway, what are we doing next? What are we gonna go to?
So let's move over to the core Joseph Magnus. This is the triple cask finish, as often referred to. Yeah, that's the one right there.
Okay, triple cask.
Yeah, so this is this to me. I always refer to this as the Magnus Flagship. I mean, this is this is their entry level bourbon. That being said, fair warning, it does retail for right at $100. So it's a premium product for sure.
It's better be some damn good bourbon.
When the family decided that they were going to relaunch this brand, they really tried to gather, what they're calling the dream team of industry professionals to try and to chat about this and what have you. So they got Dave Shurik from Woodford Reserve and Whiskey Advocate, Lifetime Achievement winner, Richard Wolf, former chairman of the Kentucky Distillers Association and vice president at Buffalo Trace, and then Nancy the Nose Fraley. So
Nancy Fraley.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Nancy Fraley, like, she is the who's who of blending bourbons, and she's a very, very interesting lady. And she actually stayed on and is the master blender for this brand to this date. But the three of those individuals got together. They put a syringe through the cork of that 122-year-old bottle that was found. They extracted a taste for each one of them, and this bourbon that you're about to try is their attempt to recreate that 122-year-old bourbon that the great grandson had found in the attic. So
gotcha. So before we even get into it, this says triple cask finished, but it's only it's only 2 casks finished. It's 3 casks, but it's only 2 finishing casks. Am I getting that right?
No. So this is a 12-year-old bourbon that's been sourced from MGP. It's then finished in Oloroso sherry, Pedro Jimenez sherry, and cognac casks. So
okay, because on the label it just says sherry and cognac cask. It doesn't say Oloroso PX and cognac. So I assumed it was only dual cask finish.
2 sherries. So with all that, you are left with a 100 proof cask finished bourbon that has got tons of flavor, really long finish. And I always tell people as you try this, especially if you buy a bottle, the way these bottles are shaped, just know going into it that it's going to open up. It's going to change not only in the bottle, but even as you pour yourself a glass, as it opens up and starts to breathe, it definitely evolves.
Oh my God, Mitch, I am so sorry. I mean no disrespect to you, my friend.
We've all been there.
Whew. For 100 proof, this is kind of hot. It's kind of astringent.
It definitely has some heat on it.
It's just the congeners, the ethanol congeners in the nose are starting to get me.
70% corn, 20% rye, 10% malted barley.
Maybe it's that rye I'm smelling then. You know what this reminds me of? Whiteboard expo markers. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why, but I'm getting expo markers. I get the sherry cask, but I can't quite determine if it's the Olo or the PX. Well, I would love to say I get the cognac cask. I don't pick that up. Do you know what house it's coming from?
Unfortunately, they don't disclose the information on where they're getting their casks.
That was my next question of Is it sherry casks or is it sherry seasoning casks?
Sherry casks.
So coming from Jerez, do we know what sherry house, sherry bodega?
Yeah. I've asked many a times, and they say, "Oh, good old proprietary." I don't know, but yeah,
That always drives me crazy
I know, right?
because, we're not trying to replicate your product here, but we want to know more about the core components.
Right.
Taking a look at the coloring on this, considering that it is 12 years and it's finished in 3 dark casks, it's actually quite light. And it could be that it's proofed down and that's opening it up a little bit. But it's quite a light color if you guys can see this. I would expect it to be much darker with that Oloroso. With that PX alone, I would expect it to be much darker. And then add the cognac to it as well. I would expect it to be more along the lines of this color, which this is a cigar blend. If you look at the cigar blend versus the regular color-wise, you would expect this one to be this color. And now the cigar blend, we'll get to that in a second, but since I'm bringing it up right now, is that finished at all?
Which one? The cigar blend?
The cigar blend. Is that cask finished?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that is done in what casks?
You've got a little Armagnac on there as well
Armagnac,
as cognac.
sherry, and cognac. Okay, so again, 3 dark spirits, but this is coming in at 6. Okay, so it's probably a factor of dilution then. If this is 100 proof, this is coming in at 61. Since they already do 100 proof, do you know if there's any plans to do a bottle and bond?
Not to my knowledge. We have the existing bottles there kind of are a bit deceiving because people see that packaging on there at times and think that it is, but no bottled and bond projects in the works to my knowledge. No. So as I mentioned, Nancy stayed on board and is the master blender for this, for all the products at Magnus. So just a real quick little bio on her if you didn't know. International and domestic consultant for both major industry and craft distillers across the country. I mean, she's worked with a ton of brands. She's even actually been a consultant for MGP, believe it or not, at times. She's kind of become a person who is a bit of a problem solver. Distilleries who are having an issue or having something they can't quite figure out. She's kind of built a reputation on being able to come in and identify where there's things that can be changed to help correct the issue. Director of Research at the American Distilling Institute. She's the creator of the American Craft Whiskey Aroma Wheel. And then a little bit more like personal type stuff for her that I just find kind of fascinating. She has a master's degree in Tibetan Buddhism from Harvard University, and she graduated from University of San Francisco Law, and she actually practiced law for international human rights for a pretty big firm up in Northern California. And all of this is before she got into the spirits world.
You said she has a master's degree in Buddhism?
Tibetan Buddhism from Harvard.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah. I mean, so to say that she's an interesting woman, it would be a huge understatement. In addition to all of that, she has what I guess you could call a photographic memory of her palate. Like she can tell you specifically how things tasted when she was like 8 years old. I've heard her tell stories of the first time she'd tried any kind of whiskey and she'd taken a drink of her dad's like whiskey and Coke, and she could remember like very specific characteristics of it even at that age.
Jeez. I wish I could do that.
Moving into where she's at now, like she's just an incredible palate. She does tasting notes every year on the different batches of cigar blend, and you read it, and it's just like, wow, she's quite the wordsmith as well. But pretty fortunate to have her leading this project. That's for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So talking about this, the triple cask. It's surprisingly well balanced. I mean, no offense to MGP or to Nancy, but it's not easy to balance 3 casks. But at the same time, it's still very corn forward, corn heavy, ex bourbon, which is interesting that shines through with the 2 sherries and the cognac. What do you usually taste on this, Mitch?
I mean, I get some nice like honey, sweeter kind of notes up front, and then as I drink more of it, the spice kind of comes out there towards the end. Sometimes I'll get like kind of more dried fruit, like apricot flavors.
Mm. I wish there was more sherry finished cognacs. That's all I can think about when I'm drinking this is like, I want a sherry finished cognac.
Get a good amount of orange on it too.
I can see that.
Or orange zest.
Definitely orange zest. That's the word I was looking for. Crepe Suzette.
There you go. I like it.
That, sweet flambéed orange liqueur.
Yeah, definitely.
I've actually only had crepe Suzette once in my life, and it was about 16 months ago. So not November 2020, but November 2019. I was in Vegas actually for WSET 3 in spirits, and also my birthday happened to coincide. So after the exam on the Saturday, I went out with a few of my classmates. Actually, no, just one of my classmates, Mr. Raj Savrawal, great guy, who also I've had on the show, and his business partner, Bill Campbell. And we just, I met them at a really cool little bar that unfortunately is no longer around. It was called Sarah's, inside of a barbecue place at the Palms, I want to say. Inside of Mabel's, and it was just this cool little like speakeasy vibe, high-end selection of spirits. You would have loved it if it was still around when you were there the other month. And they do crepe Suzette, not quite tableside, but like it's the room about the size of the room I'm in right now, and then like they do crepe Suzette like in the back corner, kind of, and you can see them doing it, and it's kind of cool.
Nice.
That's my story with crepe Suzette. Let's go back to this a little bit, pour a little bit more. The bottle shape. Do you know what's up with the bottle shape and why it's just so awkward? It's very heavy.
Yeah, it actually is a lot of design characteristics are put into the bottle to pay homage to the old original bottles from the pre-Prohibition era. They were very similar in shape. They actually did make pints as well, and the original distillery was in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I have a buddy of mine who's from Ohio who was in a flea market kind of facility and found an old Magnus bottle and sent it to me. So I've got this guy. Check this out, Sam. We've got the family crest on there, but you see the ribbed edges on the top and the bottom.
Yeah, it reminds me. They're here a little bit, not as much, and they are definitely up here on the neck.
Yeah. You definitely have them there, and then on the bottom as well. So, but point of the story is I mean, this is just the pint-sized bottle. If you had the full-size bottle, the 700 or the 750 at that time, then they're very similar to our existing bottles that we use now. So that's where that comes from.
Now, each bottle is hand numbered?
Yeah, hand batch number, bottle number. Everything's done by hand as far as that's concerned.
How much variation is there per batch? Is it age a little bit? What?
For my palate, I haven't been able to pull out much of a difference on the Magnus, on the triple cask. The cigar blend definitely has some variations to it, but for Magnus and Murray Hill, they're very consistent.
Sorry, 1 second, guys. Yeah, can you let him in?
Through here?
Sure, yeah.
Where is he?
I don't know. Sorry, guys. I record in a studio. I bring my dog with me, and my father's in the next room over, and the dog keeps looking at me through the glass like, hey, I'm lonely in here. So I don't know if you noticed, I just grabbed my phone real quick to text my father, who, again, is in the next room over, can you let the dog in?
Look at there.
And he's not where he was expecting him to be. So, he's kind of like, well, I don't know where he is. I'm working, which is fair. But, I might have to jump up in a minute to let Scooby in then.
That's fair.
And yes, my dog's name is Scooby, ladies and gentlemen. He is my best friend in the world.
You missed it, Sam. I was just showing him. Mine's asleep right here.
Oh. How cute. What's his name or her name?
Her name is Nola.
Nola. Why have I not met Nola before?
We got. She doesn't really travel with me for work very often, but
well, you should fix that.
Yeah. And bring your dog to work day. That'd be fun.
I might buy from a supplier more who brings their dog with them.
I know. I certainly would.
Just saying.
Yeah, fair.
Dogs are the key to getting me all happy. I can turn my day around when I see a dog, man. If I get to pet a dog and play with a dog, they're just the best.
So one thing I was also going to mention that I found pretty interesting. I was on a virtual tasting with Nancy, about 6 months back, and we were talking about the fact that Magnus is sourced from MGP, and she was saying it's interesting because the whole idea of this brand was trying to recreate that original bottle that was found, and we wanted to use the sherry cask because when they tasted it, they said they tasted sherry. It didn't really make sense that would be something that was being done at that time, but they went ahead and did it anyway. That was how they got their best results. Well, then after they launched the brand, they later found out in like a county bill of sale, like county records, they found a pretty large bill of sale from the Joseph A. Magnus distillery of old sherry casks. So indeed, they were actually using sherry casks. So that was kind of a fun little thing. Yeah, that they were like, well, look at there, we got it right. Furthermore, Nancy said that she said, tasting it tasted much older than it added up to be. So she questioned on whether or not the original pre-prohibition distillery could have possibly been sourcing. And she pointed out that, interestingly enough, Cincinnati is only about 30 minutes away from Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which is where MGP is.
The MGP plant, yeah.
Which at that time would have been the old Seagram's plant. So wouldn't it be funny if this, unintentionally is like way more of a recreation of the past than they even set out to do? They just kind of got lucky on a few things. There's no statistical or any kind of factual data to back that up, but it is interesting to note that it's only 30 minutes.
Never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Hey, I like it.
That is one of the few things I know about PR.
Well, that being said, the base story of how this brand was relaunched and launched is all 100% true. There's even videos online you can watch of that Dave Sherrick and Nancy all getting together and opening that original bottle. So I always like to specify that because, as you say, there's nothing bad with a bad story. Well, this one's at least true. I'll tell you that.
Mark is on fire with the questions today. He said he can only find the 100 proof and the Murray Hill available online, which is a better bang for the buck, and should he be concerned that the Murray Hill contains light whiskey?
Right. Well, I mean, that's a pretty good segue to talk about Murray Hill. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Murray Hill, Mark, and hopefully you can kind of form an opinion from there. So Murray Hill Club, they did not have a 122-year-old bottle of Murray Hill Club up in the attic, unfortunately.
Well,
but it was a brand.
Pack it up, guys. Let's go home.
It was another SKU that the original distillery had, but all they had were these really obscure marketing posters and stuff of the brand. That's like a gentleman drinks Murray Hill, or it's just a really odd thing. So when Nancy went to make this one, she just kind of got to have free reign on it. So it's a combination of an 18-year-old bourbon, an 11-year-old bourbon, and yes, there is a little bit of a 9-year light whiskey that's in there to sweeten it up. Now, your biggest difference on this, though, is that there's no cask finishing on this guy. So it is definitely more that straight bourbon flavor. If you're into cask finishing, you like a little sherry notes, you like things of that nature, definitely go with the Magnus. If you're more of a straight bourbon flavor kind of guy or kind of gal, I would highly recommend the Murray Hill Club. I really enjoy the Murray Hill on a personal level. I think that of the group, it's kind of forgotten about, or overlooked, I should say. So many people, when they think about Magnus, they're like, "Oh, you got any cigar blend? You got any cigar blend?" We're always, it's a very limited production on cigar blend. So unfortunately, the answer is usually no. And then people just go to the triple cask. But man, don't sleep on the Murray Hill. That's what I always say. Don't sleep on the Murray Hill Club, because it's quite nice.
Well, then, on that note, let's give it a nose. Huh. I asked this, Mitch, to people only who wear glasses on the regular. When you're nosing and you want to get the glass closer to you, do you take off your glasses?
Yeah, whenever I'm really going for it, really getting in there, I definitely do. But
okay, good. I'm not the only one, but I just did it kind of subconsciously. I'm like, okay.
I've been there for sure.
Now, I know it's kind of a weird thing to say because light whiskey is still whiskey. But if I didn't know there was light whiskey in here, I would assume it was a blend of bourbons from multiple sources.
Yeah. People see that on the label. It's printed out here: Murray Hill Club Bourbon Whiskey, a blend. So it's just important to know that the light whiskey that's put into this is, less than 5% of the entire bottle is that. It's a small quantity of it that's added, but Nancy's very intentional with that. She wants to have that to give it a little bit more sweetness.
Gotcha. I don't get a lot of sweetness. I actually get a lot of spice on this, which is interesting. It's not what I was expecting to get. I was expecting, much sweeter. Because you guys mentioned that light whiskey adding that little backbone in there for extra, flavor and sweetening. And this is the exact opposite. This is heavy peppers and spice. This is like, freshly cracked pepper.
Makes you
on the
wonder
nose, I do get some of that sweetness. I get a lot of the standard bourbon notes of caramels and vanillas, woodiness, barrel char, all those standard flavors, of course, that one would expect, which is why I don't bother mentioning them most of the time, except for okay, let's just write it down so that it's just people are aware that it's going to be there. This is complete power of suggestion. But ever since you said harissa, I've been thinking about chorizo, and now I smell that.
Funny how that works sometimes.
I can't help it. I smell chorizo, and it's making me hungrier and hungrier.
On the nose, do you get kind of a bit of like a, I mean, I'm really reaching here, but I'm just having fun with it at this point. Like a bit of like a herbal, like fresh herb, a little bit green, no?
Now, only because you mention it, I get oregano.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you said it best with like the classic bourbon tasting notes of the caramel, the vanilla. That those really jump out and shine, obviously. But
of course, and we all expect that. But I always try to look past that. The legs on this are actually pretty nice. Not impressive so much, but just nice. They're kind of thick. Or rather viscousy. Not so much thick, but definitely viscousy. Pretty thin though, but they're nice. I appreciate a good pair of or a good set of tears rather. I don't want to get canceled over here. And it's perfect that we talk about Joseph Magnus today, with Nancy being the master blender, the lead blender for it. Yesterday was just International Women's Day, and there's so many amazing women working in the whiskey industry.
Absolutely.
Nancy being one of them, my friend Jenny being another, my friend Tracy, just so many great women working in whiskey. Another woman who comes to mind is Jackie Zyken, who's the master taster for Old Forester. Who's always, she picks out every year's birthday bourbon editions and decides what's ready to go. So, a lot of great women working in whiskey. So yeah, that's that. I just wanted to give that quick shout out to a couple of amazing people.
Cheers to the ladies.
Cheers to the women who work so damn hard.
Indeed. So, just out of curiosity, Sam, what is your personal, what do you like better, the triple cask finish or the Murray Hill Club?
The triple cask.
Yeah, I could have guessed that.
What would give you that idea?
Well, I know that you are definitely a Scotch drinker, and I oftentimes, tell people that if you're looking for a bourbon for someone who likes both bourbon and Scotch, the triple cask finish is a really nice option because it's got some characteristics that overlap there a little bit. If you're someone who's just die hard, like I drink bourbon and that's my thing, then stick with Murray Hill.
Mark said he's been exploring blended Scotch more lately and believes blending is woefully underutilized in American whiskey.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I'm going to argue with you there because, as you well know, going through the Skaven Thief Society program, all of these are blends. I mean, this is a blend in a different sense, of course, as well, but this is a blend. This is a blend, and the Murray or the cigar the cigar is not a single cask, right?
No.
So these are all blends. Unless it's a single cask, you have a blend.
No,
you're blending multiple barrels for that consistency of flavor. Sorry, Mitch, go ahead.
I think that he's complimenting the fact that Joseph Magnus is doing this because they're really on board with the whole blending idea. I could have misunderstood his comment, but I think he's just saying that a lot of American whiskeys are more like single cask or straight.
I'm not sure, but the idea that American whiskey bourbons aren't blended is false, very false. Unless it's a single cask, it's a blend of multiple barrels, 2 barrels, 3 barrels, 200 barrels, whatever. You're blending for a consistent product in something like the triple cask, something like the Murray Hill, something like the cigar. You're trying to get that same flavor across the board. You don't want this batch of triple cask tastes different than this batch of triple cask. Sure, some slight variations going from blend to blend is normal and it happens from batch to batch. But, you're looking for that consistency. That's what you want. So I don't think blending is underutilized in American whiskey. I think it's under talked about, perhaps.
Mm.
But American producers call that marrying. No, dude. I don't know a single American producer that calls that marrying. He's using blended scotch instead of bringing whiskeys from different distilleries and different mash bills together. Okay, sure, fine. I can't argue that point then. That, yes, if you look at Little Book, for instance, from Beam, Freddie Knows Project, that is the epitome of what you're talking about. But at the same time, there is nothing saying that I have to use the same. You know what? I can argue that, actually. I totally can. Sorry, Mitch. I'm totally taking over here and going off on a tangent. But there's nothing that I have seen in the SID and, the ABCs of bourbon and everything I've studied about whiskey that says that I cannot have mash bill A in barrels 1 through 100 and then mash bill D in 5 barrels and then a third and fourth mash bill in those extra barrels. There's nothing that says I cannot experiment. Did I put these back in the right order? Yeah, I think. There's nothing. Mark also apologizes, Mitch.
You're getting them all worked up, Mark.
This is the kind of discussion I live for and really want. I love this kind of conversation. There's nothing to state that I cannot have multiple different mash bills in a batch of bourbon. There's nothing saying that it all has to be one mash bill. If I'm blending it for consistency, it's still bourbon, right?
Well,
no, hang on 1 second. Sorry, Mitch. I'm really sorry to cut you off here. But now that I'm thinking out loud and talking out loud, what I just said doesn't make sense anymore, because when you have a blend of mash bills, right? Okay, now I'm going to be quiet while I think and let you talk.
Well, I will say that, in America, the blended bourbon is often misunderstood in the labeling of it and how it's we think of a blended bourbon as an inferior product when it could be a blend of bourbons that could be something quite delightful. So I don't know, something that we all learn as we just kind of start to enter this world of bourbon. What do you say?
I'm really sorry about that whole diatribe.
You want to try some cigar blend?
Let's do it. Oh, no, it's a blend. It's inferior. Now, I'm looking forward to this. I've only had cigar blend once before, maybe twice. If you gave me some at the Wine Warehouse show that time, I don't remember.
I did.
Okay, so 3 times now, including today.
Which batch you got there?
Right here we have 34.
Okay, nice.
What do you got?
I have 24.
Okay, then.
So this is a blend of an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old bourbon, finished in Armagnac casks, Oloroso, PX, and cognac. So
4 casks.
the Armagnac really being the prominent one. I think it's spending more time in Armagnac than the others.
So here's an interesting question for you, Mitch, that hopefully you can answer. Mark, I'll get to your point in 1 second. This is a blend of 11-year-old and 18-year-old, but normally, if you're putting, older juice mixed with younger juice, you don't necessarily address it as a blend. It's just like, oh yeah, it's an 11-year-old. So what makes this different? What makes this, a blend of bourbons versus, just bourbon with 18-year-old whiskey thrown in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got to be honest, I couldn't give you the right answer. If I had it, I would. I'll have to bubble that up to the distillery, get their take on that. Please
do. I'd love to know that. Mark, if you have any idea on that one, your opinion is, of course, more than welcome. He said, following up on your point, this is one of those things that gets confusing because the word blend has both a legal definition and common usage definition. Absolutely, Mark. Yeah. And it's frustrating. And like with blended scotch, as well, people see it as inferior. But I actually just cracked open a blended scotch distilled at Loch Lomond actually last night. Funnily enough, we were talking about Loch Lomond earlier. The Glengarry arrived to me yesterday, Mitch.
Nice.
And I got to give you some of that to try. I think you'll like it. And that's a blend of malted barley whiskey and malted grain whiskey. Therefore, it's a blended scotch. And people assume that because it's like $16 and because it's a blend, that it's inferior quality compared to a single malt, when that is so often not the case. Yes, sometimes blended bourbons, blended scotches, blended whatevers are garbage, but that's not always the case.
Right.
Oftentimes they're very good and actually, a more affordable, more approachable way, easier way to get into the whiskeys.
For sure.
Ooh. And this is clocking in at 122.4. Ooh. Huh. Hit those salivary glands a little hard, did you? Jesus. Ooh. Hitting me a little hard today. Damn. I'm going to try and add just a little bit of water here. A little hard pouring out of a corksicle to not add too much.
I was shocked you didn't bust out some fancy misting dropper apparatus that you had on your keychain. Or
I actually had that in the room behind me if you want me to grab it. No, I literally have an eyedropper vial that I keep in a Glencairn Pelican case. What do you do?
Oh, she's just waking up over there.
Bring her on the show. Pick her up and bring her on screen. This is a pet-friendly channel.
All right.
Hi.
There's Nola Louise right here.
What breed is
She's a
she?
Jack Russell Chihuahua mix.
I was going to say Whippet Chihuahua.
That's what the vet tells us anyway. She's a rescue.
Aw.
She's
How long have you had her?
2 years, maybe 3.
Oh, what a baby.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
Yeah, no, I can't get Scooby to go away that easily. If I put him on my lap, he stays there until like he's ready to go.
Typically that's the case with Nola, but she got a new bed and she's really digging it. So she's become an independent woman.
Scooby got a bed for Christmas 2019, I think it was. And I'm like, he won't use it. He never uses the bed. That dog loves that thing.
Oh, nice.
Doesn't matter that it's too small for him
Mm.
and that he's basically flattened it out to almost nothing. He loves that thing. Doesn't matter he has 2 brand new bigger ones that are, bigger than the one he loves a lot. Doesn't matter. Whenever he can, he goes right into the small bed and goes round and round, and they just plops himself down.
Nice.
Mitch, we powered through these real fast today.
Hey, man, we were thirsty.
While we're on the cigar blend, is there anything else you want to tell us about it?
I mean, just the cigar blend is, it's released typically 4 times a year. This year, it's going to be released 3 times a year. I think a lot of we missed our first batch release for 2021. I'm going to blame it on the move from DC to Michigan. But nonetheless, next batch should be available to purchase probably in April. Is what we're looking like.
Now, if people want to purchase these, what are we looking at retail-wise? For the triple cask, the Murray, and the cigar.
Triple cask is usually going to come in really close to $100. If you get lucky and you shop around, you might be able to find just under, but typically right around 100, 105, 110, something of that nature. Murray Hill Club is probably going to be not much more, maybe 110 to 120. The Vigilant is 40, typically 40, 44, something like that.
Not bad for a neat gin or cocktail gin. That's a pretty good price.
Yeah. The cigar blend is the interesting one. You should be able to buy a cigar blend for under $200. One
should be.
Yeah, you should be able to buy it for 180 or something of that nature. But it's just such a limited released item. It's won quite a few awards. It's on a lot of lists that are pretty powerful lists out there. So it's become one of those bottles that is very highly sought after. And unfortunately, with that fame, you're going to typically be looking at a pretty decent markup on that. So, I mean, I see him out there for, close to 300 on a pretty regular basis. But honestly, that's only when they're available. Like right now, our last release was in December. You don't see cigar blend on the shelf anywhere in California at this point,
gotcha.
unless you've got a retailer who's just got a trophy cabinet and is really trying to gouge people on price.
Whew! Wow, sorry about that.
You're all right.
Our friend Emily just joined. She says, "Thanks, notification fail." A lot of people who usually watch the show usually get a notification when we go live.
Oh, gotcha.
And I had a feeling that there was a bit of an issue today because I know a couple people who hit the notification bell and weren't here yet.
Oh, shoot.
She also said cigar blend equals Nancy Fraley, or Nancy freaking Fraley, which equals awesome. Emily, we've been talking about Nancy the entire hour so far, actually. And how she's really good at what she does and how impressive it is. We've been talking about blending for consistency and how blended bourbons and blended spirits in general just kind of get a bad rep. Yeah, while I have you
Wrongfully
here,
so.
Emily, say hi, ask us any questions you have. It's been a slow day today. I think the weather's driving people away and making people hole up indoors and curl up under the covers. So I was thinking maybe we'll call it a little bit early today, Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, the only other thing I could really share with about Nancy, though, I mean, she got her training at Germain Robin cognac, brandy house up in Northern California.
Brandy house, not cognac.
Yeah, saved myself there. But because of that, she's got a very like old world French style of blending, and one of the things that I know she does that I think has a big impact on these whiskeys is the concept of the slowly proofing down her spirits over several weeks.
Slow water reduction, right?
Exactly. Has a big impact on the spirit. But it's just
I've heard that it's not quite so shocking to the spirit.
Right.
Another brand that I'm a fan of, Still Austin, which is another one of her brands.
Yeah.
Does that slow water reduction, which is where I first heard about it. They have this goofy little song video that they have and do.
Nice.
So I will share that on the Discord later for everyone who's in the whiskey Discord who's watching. Out of the four, Mitch, including the gin, as much as I was expecting it to be the cigar blend, it's the triple cask for me.
Sam, you just made my day. And when I'm in the market and I'm talking to people in the field and people are hitting me up via email or text or whatever, they're always after the cigar blend, and you'd be surprised how many people have never even had the opportunity or taken the time to buy the core Magnus. I know.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
The another person who's in our same camp with this is Brandon, the lead spirits guy over at Wine
Brandon
Warehouse.
Bartlett, director of spirits for Wine Warehouse, California. Absolutely.
Yeah, he says don't sleep on the core. Joseph Magnus, the triple cask. That's his favorite. And for those of you who are out there who are very interested in Joseph Magnus and always looking for that bottle of cigar blend, you know what? I hope you find it, and I know if you stay vigilant, you will find it one of these days. But do yourself a favor.
Vigilant.
Do yourself a favor and buy a bottle of Joseph Magnus, because it does not disappoint. And you're going to enjoy it if you're a bourbon drinker. You're going to be able to share that with Scotch drinkers. It's a very fun bottle with just a lot of character and flavor. And like I said earlier, I mean, it changes in the glass and changes in the bottle as it opens up.
Here's the thing, Mitch. Everyone who knows me knows my palate. Oftentimes, they feed me cask strength, especially, at tasting meetings when they come to taste me at the bar.
Right.
They're like, oh, we have this new cask strength. We have this new cask strength, cask strength, cask strength.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows I love my cask strength, but I actually prefer the openness, mellowness of the 100 proof of the triple cask compared to the 120 odd proof of the cigar blend.
Yeah. You know what? I will just as a caveat
the availability of triple cask.
Just as a caveat to that, though, Sam, it took me experiencing this myself before I really fully bought into it. But if you notice, that cigar blend bottle has got a couple ounces poured out of it.
Yes,
like it was opened very recently. These, I'm telling you, they change in the bottle. They open up a lot. And that cigar blend
absolutely.
That cigar blend.
What's happening, for everyone who doesn't really understand it, the bottles feel to usually right here approximately, just a little bit above the shoulder, into the neck?
Actually above.
Oh, so more like to here then.
Yeah. and that I wish they didn't, because those first few pours are much different than the heart of the bottle.
Absolutely. So, when you get it to here, what you think is air is mostly replaced with, ethanol.
Yep.
For lack of a better term, alcohol, ethanol, I believe, as it evaporates. So when you open it up, that evaporates and comes out of the bottle and is replaced with air. And that keeps happening where they keep swapping out with each other, basically. So that's kind of how you get that, oxidization of a whiskey bottle. So if you look again, like he was talking about, comparing the two, and then even comparing the Murray Hill.
Yeah.
The Murray Hill's almost drained. These are, Mitch again is super great, super generous. Unfortunately, he only has these bottles that are for him. So he can't, be like, hey, Sam, here's bottles, everything I have portfolio for you to keep. So he's very generous and lets me borrow his samples and goes without, or goes with what he has when he's joining me. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So obviously they've been well loved, these bottles. So you can see that with the Murray Hill, this has been replaced heavily by air. And yeah, there's still some ethanol evaporating in here and oxidizing, but nowhere near as much as here. So it's interesting, if you look at it from, and I guess for you guys, it's, I guess, going downwards, but for me, it's going upwards. It's increasing in available liquid. So, we go from the cask strength, which is probably about to here usually.
Mm-hmm.
This is clocking in again at 122.4, 0.40, not 0.04, 122.40. This is clocking in at 100, and this is 106?
103.
103. Thank you. It's like, it's 10 something. So that's really interesting for me, is seeing, how the flavors will change over time as, you drain more and more of the bottle. I had that with actually a bottle of Barrel Craft Spirits New Year, that I poured the first couple of pours out of, and last night was the first time I actually kind of enjoyed that one. Now, I love Barrel Craft Spirits. I love what Barrel does, but the New Year I've not been a fan of this year. And, after letting it open up since basically December, it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the next thing I was going to say. I'm not just speaking about Joseph Magnus. And for those of you who are tuning in or watching this video from YouTube or what have you, that goes across the board. Any spirit that, any of these bourbons, especially that you get, regardless of the brand, and they're higher proof and they come off, a little bit hotter than you would like them to. Like, don't give up on them. They'll change. They'll open up. Share some with your friends.
And don't be afraid to add water.
And that too. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Mr. Mitch, I appreciate your time today, sir. Guys, it was a slow day today, and I know as sure as hell I am tired. I've been yawning this entire time, so we're going to call it a few minutes earlier than usual. So, Mitch, cheers. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week. We're joined by Jack Ferris, National Brand Ambassador for Bushmills, for a pre-St. Paddy's Day celebration.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sam.
Cheers, everybody. Mitch, don't go anywhere. We'll talk to you in just a second.
Take care.